So we've had the extraordinary fortune to meet the Buddha's teachings in this life. And among the teachings, to encounter the Vinaya and to really think about ethical conduct and how ethical conduct is the backbone of the rest of our practice. So if we don't keep good ethical conduct, developing concentration in our meditation will be very difficult because we'll continually be distracted. And without concentration, developing wisdom will also be difficult. And without good ethical conduct, bodhicitta is almost impossible, because bodhicitta is based on benefiting others, and ethical conduct is the beginning of that, by not harming them. So if we can't abandon harming sentient beings, it's going to be very difficult to benefit them. So having the opportunity to learn about and practice ethical conduct is quite a good fortune and a privilege on our part. And so with that long-term aspiration for full awakening, in order to transform our minds so we can be of more service to other living beings, then we'll learn about Vinaya. The Tibetan word for Vinaya is dulwa, and dulwa means to subdue. So what we're trying to do in practicing Vinaya is to subdue our body, speech, and mind. And like I just said, if we can't subdue our body, speech, and mind, being of benefit to others is going to be pretty difficult, because we have to stop harming before we can be of benefit. So the 10 non-virtues is a very good guide, but it's a guide, but taking the monastic precepts really boosts our ability to have good ethical conduct, because we've thought about specific kinds of actions, what we want to do, what we don't want to do, and we've become very clear there's certain actions I do not want to do them. And then we take a precept, in the presence of our preceptors, imagining that all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are there witnessing it. And so that gives us a lot more inner strength and inner courage. And in addition, when we take precepts, we receive what's called a precept body, or another translation is an imperceptible form, a non-revelatory form. It's something that's described in Abbey Dharma as like some kind of subtle thing made of subtle elements that acts as a dam that prevents us from doing physical and verbal non-virtues. So all of that really helps us in our practice to subdue the mind, because although the Pratimoksha precepts deal specifically with the actions of body and speech, to subdue our body and speech, we have to work with our mind, because all of our physical and verbal actions begin with the mind. They begin with an intention in the mind. Okay, so it all comes back to training the mind. Also, wearing the robes gives us that, makes us more mindful, increases our mindfulness of the precepts, our introspective awareness of what we're doing and saying and thinking and feeling. Yeah, so the robes are a very big help in that process. Yeah. It's not the robes and the hair that make a monastic, it's our mind that makes a monastic. That's why in the morning we recite the verse about the monastic mind. But the external things are props that can really help us. And so where we are in the ordination ceremony, yesterday we talked about or at the time, where the Upadhyaya gives you the robes and also the bowl. Yeah. So the bowl also really reminds you of your precepts. Yeah. And it's very helpful. The bowls that we use here at the Abbey, we got from Taiwan. I don't know how many years ago they started making those ones that are made out of metal, but also insulated. The metal doesn't burn your hands if you put something hot in it. When I was ordained, our bowls were ceramic and very easily breakable. So these ones are actually much better. But it really helps when you eat out of a bowl. It reminds you, oh, I'm a renunciate. I'm not eating with fancy silverware on a really nice plate. And, I'm trying to live a simple lifestyle. So that also is very helpful. In the Tibetan tradition, they don't really give you bowls, not that I've ever seen, or maybe you hold a bowl once or twice during the ordination and that's it. And I don't see Sangha so much eating out of bowls. They'll get sometimes the aluminum bowls that you get in the bazaar in India, and some people will eat out of those or the aluminum plates, but they don't have a standard kind of monastic alms bowl, which is unfortunate because I think it's really helpful when you eat out of that. Okay, so we're going to go into the section now of what we've had so far is the preparatory things, the part of the actual ordination, and so I want to go through the when the Acharya asks the questions, because there are questions that you're quizzed to see if you are qualified to receive the ordination, and so it's important to understand what those questions are. But before we do that, let's chant again the songs about the chant. Great are these clothes of liberation. That will remind us about the importance of the vow, the robes. The robes and the bowl.
Great are these clothes of liberation, clothes of the signless merit field. Wear them respectfully and act according to the precepts. Lead all sentient beings to liberation. Great are these clothes of liberation, clothes of the signless merit field. Wear them respectfully and act according to the precepts. Lead all sentient beings to liberation.
So you can see by just the words of the chant that it's encouraging us to respect ourselves. Yeah, if we wear the robes respectfully, we value what the robes symbolize, then we become somebody, who is worthy of wearing those robes. Mm-hmm. So it's something to really think about, and as it said earlier in the text, not to disparage ourselves. Okay? And so then yesterday we also did the repentance chant, which we won't do again today. It's a little bit long, but it's quite important to do that. And like I said before, in the Chinese system, when you have a 1 to 3 month program, you do the confession every night, the confession and repentance with precepts every night. Here in the ceremony, then you do it right before taking the precepts. Okay, so you really want to get rid of all those negativities as much as possible. Make yourself a clean, clear vessel to receive the precepts. And then also know that you have to continue purifying after you receive the precepts too. Okay, so the candidate has been come back in the room. They've done bowing while everybody's chanting the repentance verse. Yeah, and now they go before the acharya or the instructor, and they kneel down, and the acharya asks them questions. Okay, so we'll go through these because this really helps us see who's qualified and who's not, and what the reasons were that make somebody qualified or not qualified. Okay, so the first question is, have you committed an excluding offense? Okay, so as it says in, well, first I should say, there's 13 principal qualifications that you have to meet, and if you don't meet any of those, then you can't ordain. Then there's some other subsidiary qualifications that can be temporary hindrances to receiving the ordination, which means that you have to clear things up, and then once they're cleared up, then you can take the ordination. So we're starting right now with the ones that are the 13 major ones. Okay, so somebody who's committed an excluding offense. Okay, so our footnote says, people who have taken the 5 or 8 lay precepts and broken one of the first 4, sexual misconduct, stealing, killing, or lying, are considered outside the congregation of the Buddha Dharma. So it's saying, if you want to take the monastic precepts, you should be able to keep your lay precepts well first. Okay? And then, so somebody may have broken, there's the infraction level where you just have a minor transgression, but somebody may have even broken the 5 or 8 precepts from the root. So it says, depending on whether the misdeed is serious, intermediate, or minor in severity, a Vinaya master will consider the individual situation to see if the disciple is disqualified from receiving monastic precepts. If the misdeed is of an intermediate or minor level, the disciple must have confessed and purified it before the ordination ceremony. So even if you made a big mistake before, you have to have confessed it and purified it, not kept it from yourself, hidden it under the table, pretended it didn't exist. Okay? But to bring it out. So hopefully, when asked, have you committed an excluding offense, an offense that would exclude you from receiving the precepts, then the disciple says no. Okay? So actually, you go through all of this before the ordination ceremony, so that in the middle of the ceremony, you don't all of a sudden find out that somebody isn't qualified. That could be a bit embarrassing and a bit problematic. Okay? So, the Acharya, the Upajjhayaka have checked with the person beforehand. All this has been sorted out. In the full ordination ceremonies for the bhikshu or the bhikshuni, the Acharya takes you out of the room and questions you about these, and then brings you back in the room and questions you again in front of the whole Sangha. Okay? So it's very important that people are truthful and in this respect, and pure in this respect. Okay, the second one, have you ruined the pure conduct of a bhikshu or a bhikshuni? Okay, so have you knowingly had sex with a bhikshu or a bhikshuni in such a way that they committed a root transgression and lost their ordination? Okay. We had the situation once of somebody who did that, but the person they slept with, it was a woman who had had sex with somebody she thought was a monk. And, the women I've talked to who this has happened, they've thought, well, I don't know what the precepts are. The monks know what their precepts are and what they can and can't do. But you have naughty monks who go ahead and do it anyway. And in this case, he had sex many times before with other women, but was still wearing robes. Yeah? So she didn't actually break this one because he wasn't actually a monk at that point. But somebody who breaks a root precept and continues to wear robes, that is horrible, horrible karma, because you're being an imposter, and especially if the lay people are giving you donations and giving you food out of respect for the Sangha who holds precepts, you're being a total fake and accepting food that is not really being offered to you. Yeah, it's being offered to people who are monastics, but somebody's, already committed a downfall and they are no longer a monastic. Okay, so it's very important if somebody, does a parajika, that's the root transgression, that they disrobe right away, rather than pretending to still be a monastic. And better yet, if somebody is about to commit a parajika, they should give their precepts back before they do it. Okay, so if somebody gets in a situation, they're overcome by passion, because that's the one that is usually broken. Then they should at least give back their precepts before they have sex, so that they're not committing a root transgression. Okay, but you can see with this one that if you're the person they slept with, you're getting in trouble too, and it can prevent you from taking the ordination. Yeah, because it's assuming that you should know better than to have sex with somebody who's ordained. And so this is a question for both the men and the women. Okay. The third one is, have you taken affiliation by theft? Okay. So this one says, undeservedly claiming the rights of monastic status or seniority. In particular, knowingly participating in a Sangha karman while not having the qualifications. Other cases of affiliation by theft are eavesdropping on a Sangha karman and taking the precepts even though you have one of the 13 major hindrances. Okay, so what is a Sangha karman? When the Sangha needs to make decisions, they meet together and they enact what is called a Sangha karman. There's different kinds of Sangha karman depending on the kind of decision the Sangha is making. For example, tomorrow when we do posada, the bhikshunis have a Sangha karman with just one motion that is saying, we're going to purify, and we're going to recite the precepts. Everybody agree with that? Everybody keeps silent. We go ahead. So it's only the motion, because that's something that, we've come together. It's pretty obvious that we're going to do that. It isn't a serious decision, because we're already there and we know what's going to happen. Then there's other things. For example, if we're going to appoint somebody to do a specific task for the Sangha, or, to do a specific task, then you have one motion and one proclamation. Okay? So the person who's leading the Sangha Karma makes the motion, and then they recited something that's quite similar to the motion again, and ask, does everybody agree? Okay, so they recite the proclamation one time. If there's silence, it means everybody agrees. And then they recite a conclusion saying the Sangha has decided to do this. Okay. Then there's things that are very serious. For example, giving shikshamana or bhikshu or bhikshuni ordination, where you really want to make sure that the Sangha is quite definitely in agreement. So there's the motion, and then 3 proclamations. Yeah, it's repeated 3 times. And if everybody is silent all 3 times, then there's the conclusion saying that we've decided this, and it will go ahead as directed, as decided. Okay? So in this case, this is somebody who's claiming the rights of a monastic or claiming seniority that they don't really have. Okay? So here in particular, participating in a Sangha karma by not having the qualifications. So that would be, for example, if you were a Shramaneri or a Shramanera, you go to a Sangha karma and you pretend to be a bhikshu or bhikshuni. Okay? Because it's only the bhikshus and bhikshunis that do the Sangha karmas. You have to be a full member of the Sangha to be involved in the official decision-making process. The reason for that is when you are a Shramaneri or a Shramanera, you just entered, you're trying, you aren't settled, you don't understand what the monastic life is like, you don't know a lot about what the Buddha intended for how the Sangha to live, and so you're still in the process of learning all those things. And also, in addition, at the time of the Buddha, it was the children who took the Shramaneri and Shramanera precepts. So clearly, when you're a child, you don't understand that, and so you wouldn't be involved in the final decision-making process. It's the people who are fully ordained who do that. Okay, so like I said the other day, everybody can offer their opinions and their ideas, but it's only the fully ordained people who make the decision, and the decision has to be by consensus. And if you don't attend the Sangha Karma when the formal ceremony of okaying this is done, you have to excuse yourself to somebody who is attending and say that you will accept whatever the Sangha decides. Okay? So you can't, the Sangha is going to make a decision and you think that it's not quite what you want, so you don't attend. They decided, and then you come back the next day and you say, well, you decided and I wasn't there, so what you decided doesn't hold. Yeah, I wasn't there, my vote didn't count, we have to do it again, and then, of course, you veto it. Okay, so that acting like that is not allowed. If you don't come, you have to convey a reason, and there's only 2 good reasons for not coming. One is you're sick, the other is that you're doing work for the Sangha. So I don't feel like it is not a reason for not attending a Sangha karma. Okay, I don't feel like it. I'm mad at so-and-so. I don't want to go. I'm in a bad mood. These are not good reasons for missing Sangha karmas, such as doing the posada. Okay, you have to be sick or be doing some work for the Sangha. If the Sangha is not in harmony, and somebody's going, I don't want to be with these people, I can't stand them, then you can't even do the Sangha karma. Or you have to go outside the sima and do it there. So it's very important that people are in harmony and that they come together and do these ceremonies in harmony. Yeah. So if that day you're in a bad mood and somebody put the spatula in a place you don't like it and you're really ticked off, you got to work with your mind and get your body there. Yeah. You can't say, I don't feel like it. I'm really mad and somebody scolded me today. No, you got to go. Because if you don't, then the whole Sangha can't do their, what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah. So the Buddha set this up. He was quite smart, wasn't he? Yeah. He was quite smart. He knew people get into moods and invent all sorts of reasons for not joining the group. And, he said that you can't do that. Yeah, if you're inside the sima, you've got to go. So if somebody really, really doesn't want to go, then they have to go outside the sima and be outside the sima for the duration of the whole ceremony. And then the sima is like the territory that we've set up. Yeah, so you have to go outside, and then if you come in later, the Sangha already decided in harmony, and so definitely your vote doesn't count because you were outside the sima. Okay, so the Buddha was smart. He didn't want us to give us any space to do our little trips. Yeah, do you ever do little trips? Yeah. There's an awful lot of people who don't feel well on certain days, and you can really see that there's a habit, a lot of coincidence in the days that they don't happen to feel well. Okay, so I got to be careful about that. Okay, so taken affiliation by theft is, you've pretended to be something you've not, and then you've joined in the Sangha karma, and then maybe you obstruct it and you make it so that you veto it, and the Sangha can't do anything. Or other cases are you eavesdrop. Yeah, the Sangha is doing a procedure and settling a matter, and you are hiding and eavesdropping. You want to know what the Sangha's business is. Yeah, because maybe they have to discipline somebody, and you want to go and hear what the discipline is going on and what's going on, and then you can go and say, what this Sangha's doing, so and so is really naughty, and so blah 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 blah. No, you can't do that as a lay person. Yeah, it's quite serious because it prevents you from ordaining yourself afterwards. Okay, so for example, when we do posada, there's a part of it where the shramaneras and shramaneras come in, and then when it comes time for us to do our Sangha karmas and recite our precepts, they leave and nobody else can come in when we're doing that. Mm-hmm.
If you need to discipline another bhikshuni or bhikshu, then how does that work?
Then it depends on the kind of offense that they've created. Yeah, there's different ways of making amends for different offenses. So if they got something that by ways that are not condoned, that are illegal, then they have to come before the Sangha. They have to give up the item they got. The Sangha, you're in front of everybody and you have to say, I got this by a way I shouldn't have. or if somebody commits a very serious offense, that is because there's different categories of precepts. So if you commit one that's in a serious category, if you commit one that's almost a root downfall, but not one, then there's various actions that the Sangha takes.
Specifically, like for the Sangha Karman, if they're supposed to participate, but they're the ones being disciplined, how does that work?
Well, they're there.
Oh, they're there.
Yeah.
But then their vote counts?
No.
Okay.
No. There's a whole long description of whose vote counts in the Sangha Karma. Okay? Because, for example, during the full ordination process, the candidate is in the room and the Sangha is doing a Sangha Karma, saying that, yes, we agree to admit this person. Yeah. But in that situation, it's okay for the candidate who is not fully ordained to be present when the bhikshu or bhikshuni Sangha is doing the Sangha Karma. Yeah. What? No. For the shikshamana, they're out of the room, and then they come in. For the bhikshuni, they're there in the room because you're standing on the platform, and the Sangha's doing the Sangha Karma. I sat through quite a number of those this spring. Yeah. Okay. So that's the third one, disqualifying factor. Then the fourth is, are you a person wavering between Buddhist and non-Buddhist paths? Okay, so this is somebody who can't make up their mind what they believe. It says here, someone is ordained in another religion. So this is at the time of the Buddha, so they were a disciple of another teacher from another tradition, wandering ascetic tradition. Okay. And then they come and they request ordination in the Buddhist Sangha. Yeah. And they're supposed to go through a period, I think it's of 4 months, where they wait and, the Sangha assesses them and sees if they're really sincere. So then the Sangha may ordain them. But then that person disrobes and they go back to their previous religion. Okay? Remember I told you the person who became a Buddhist, and then I was away for a month and she became a Catholic? Yeah? So then if that person comes back again and for a second time requests ordination as in the Buddhist Sangha, then they can't do it, okay? Because you can see that their mind isn't stable. So one of the main factors that the Sangha is looking for, there's many factors, but one is that people are stable. They know what they're doing. Yeah, they've consciously decided, voluntarily decided, and their intention and decision are stable. It's not just, well, I kind of like those robes. I'd like to sit in the front row, and I have nothing else to do, so let's go take ordination. No. Okay? You would be surprised at the number of Westerners who come along, okay, because Buddhism is new in the West. They don't understand what the Sangha is. They don't understand the Dharma. It looks kind of glamorous, you can be a Buddhist monastic. And they don't understand much, and they, decide they want to get ordained. Yeah. I told you about somebody who attended the pre-ordination course at Tushita, who was going to take ordination and then go back and live with his wife and family because he didn't know that you had to be celibate if you ordained. Okay. I knew somebody else. This is a really sad case. Of somebody who had been around the Sangha, in Tibetan Buddhism, and they saw how the Tibetans kind of, with the eating in the afternoon, many people in the afternoon, and then people were putting on lay clothes, and the Vinaya was a little bit relaxed, okay, i.e. sloppy, but I'm being polite, relaxed. And so that person knew there was a precept of celibacy, but they thought, well, there's all these other precepts that people, they're eating at night, they're wearing lay clothes, they're playing music, so they don't take those precepts very seriously. They don't take the celibacy one very seriously either. So then they wound up having sex with somebody, and then finding out later that that meant that they were no longer a Sangha member. Yeah. So, you get these kinds of cases where people don't know very much about what they're doing. In this particular case, I think the tradition has some responsibility, and if people aren't behaving properly, then they're setting that example for the new people who come along. And here was this one person who, thought, well, yeah, they don't keep these other ones strictly, so the sexual one they don't do either. Then they wound up being out. Okay. So, and then, you come, people whose minds are not very stable. We get all sorts of people. I mean, I think everybody knows that people, lots of people who are a bit lost, they're looking for who knows what. I mean, we get such interesting letters, emails. Venerable Sumton can write a book about them. Yeah. We had one guy who, I think he was in his 60s, maybe something. He was in Georgia, and he wrote, and he said, we had never met him or heard from him before. And he wrote, and he said, I want to be a monk. I've sold everything. I'm getting in my van. I'm driving out there, and I'll be there in a few days, and I want to ordain in the Sravasti Abbey. Yeah, we had an open house one time for the you remember this? Yeah, for the community, and some guy shows up with a suitcase and says, I'm moving in. I want to be monk. Yeah, we have a number of people who turn up, especially young men in their late teens, early 20s, who come and are they're really lost. It's very sad, quite lost, and they show up and they want to ordain, and they don't know anything about Buddhism or ordination or anything like that. So, clearly, to ordain, you need a really stable intention, and you need to understand what you're doing. Now, otherwise, it doesn't turn out well. And this has been one of the problems, I think, with the Western Sangha, as I explained before, that our Tibetan teachers don't speak English. They can't really talk to somebody and see who is mentally stable and who isn't. And yet they're the ones who make the decisions about who ordains. And then they ordain the people and then send them to one of the Western monasteries. And you have to take them, and the Sangha that is living at the monastery has no control, because the Geshe or the Rinpoche ordain that person, and you're in that organization, so you have to take them, and it becomes quite confusing for people, not only for the person who got ordained, but also for the people in the community. So I've lived through a bit of that. Yeah, quite difficult. Oh, yeah.
So within the
modern context where most people who are following other religions wouldn't necessarily ordain in those religions, someone who ordains in a Buddhist tradition disrobes, would that be sufficient in this case to say, no, you can't take ordination again? Or like, within a modern context, how would you interpret that?
Yeah, if somebody, you don't have to ordain as a Catholic priest or whatever. But if somebody, let's say, left Buddhism and went to another religion, became very actively involved in that religion, and then after a year or two decided they wanted to come back and be a Buddhist monastic, I would really think twice about it. Yeah, because they would join the other religion for a few years already. Yeah, and ordaining, I don't think, like you say, it's not what happens necessarily in our culture. Yeah. We've had a few situations of Catholic monks and nuns writing us, and they want to correspond with us for a long time and talk about, maybe coming here and whatever. And at first it seems like, oh, that's very nice. Here are these Catholics, they're interested. They'll come, maybe they even want to ordain, we want to grow our community. But then you ask, does the leader of your monastery know that you're writing to a Buddhist community asking about this? As soon as you ask that question, they stop writing. Yeah? So there okay, they're writing because, they're training there, but they're not really satisfied. They're not really sure what they believe. They're going behind the back of the abbot or abbess. Yeah. We had a situation, one nun from another Buddhist tradition who, was writing a lot and asking for guidance, and I was trying to give her guidance and so on. And then at one point she came to a place where I was teaching, and I met her, and she was telling me the story that, she told her abbess that she was going home to visit her family, and instead she came to the place where I was because she wanted to meet me. To me, somebody who lies to their abbot or abbess, that is not something you do, is to lie to your abbot or abbess. So I really, yeah. Okay. It's quite interesting. You learn a lot. Yeah. Okay. So this person, they're not quite sure what they believe. They want to be this, they want to be that, So that you need to be careful of. Somebody who was once really involved in a religion, they gave that up. It didn't make sense to them anymore. They come, they learn Buddhism. It makes sense to them. They want to ordain. That's totally fine. Yeah, that person's mind is clear. They're not going back and forth. They gave up their first religion before they even learned about Buddhism, so there had already been a lot of thought process going on. Okay, so that's a very different situation, because almost all of us are people who belong to other religions before, I think. Yeah? Okay, then 5 is, are you a Pandaka? Okay, so Pandakas, or Pandaka, I'm not sure which way you emphasize it. Okay, so this is somebody who has physiological or psychological irregularities related to sex. Okay, so there's different lists of what a Pandaka is. So the list from the Dharma Vinaya, they talk about 5 types of people. Someone born without sexual organs. Okay. Someone who has been castrated. In ancient India, they had all the eunuchs who were part of the court who had been castrated. Third is a voyeur, somebody who needs to see other people having sexual intercourse to arouse sexual desire. Yeah. So you can see for that kind of person to ordain, that's going to be a bit difficult, huh? 4, someone whose sexual organs disappears when engaging in sexual intercourse. They had some unusual things happen at the time of the Buddha. Yeah. Maybe it still happens now. And then a half-month Pandaka, someone who can act as a male only for half of a month. Don't ask me what they do the other half of the month. Okay? But there's different lists in the different Vinayas as to what this entails. Okay? Some people ask this, does being gay prohibit you from taking the precepts? No, it doesn't. But somebody who's gay, because you're housed with the same sex as you are, is going to have an extra challenge to control their desire. So we should try and make, they have to be very careful and, yeah. Okay, yeah?
I don't understand why someone who's been castrated or someone born without sexual organs, or even someone who has to watch others have sex to have sexual desire, why that is a problem for ordination.
Okay, if you don't have sexual organs, do you join the Bhikshu Sangha or the Bhikshuni Sangha? Okay, if somebody's been castrated, which Sangha do they join? Yeah, and doesn't being castrated, doesn't that create some kind of mental disturbance too in the person's mind? Somebody who's a voyeur, do you want a voyeur in the monastery? Okay. Mm-hmm.
So, in the case of number 2, then, if you're a person who wants to transition and you're a man, and you get all of the operation done, and that would, according to this, prohibit.
It seems like I know of a situation in one Dharma center where a man transitioned, including with the surgery, to be a woman, and she was ordained. Yeah, the teacher did give her the ordination because she had the organs of a woman at that point. Somebody who hasn't had the surgery, then again, it's difficult. Yeah. And also with that kind of thing, I would really want to get, as with everybody who we ordain, really get to know somebody very well. Yeah, because sometimes, some of the trans people that I've talked to, there's a lot of emotional stuff going on, and a lot of, do I fit in? Don't I fit in? Sensitivity about identity. And so in a lay context, all of that makes sense and it's very acceptable. Living in a Sangha community, I think some of that processing that they have to go through when they're transitioning, or even after they've transitioned, could make for some difficulties. Yeah. But it is something that people are discussing. Okay, now we have the 5 heinous actions. Yeah. So these are actions that if you, according to the Sutrayana, if you've committed in this life, at the time of death you go straight to the hell realm. Okay, so are you a person who has committed patricide, killed your father, killed your mother, killed an arhat, caused schism in the Sangha, or maliciously caused the Buddha to shed blood? Okay, so these look very straightforward, but what about a situation where of assisted suicide, where your mother or your father is terminally ill and they ask you, please, to help them die. Okay? I met somebody, and that was the situation. She wasn't thinking of ordaining or anything, but her father was terminally ill. He asked the children, please, to, I think it was through pills, get the pills and help him to die. And she did that, yeah, out of compassion for her father. And when she told me, I didn't say, oh, that's one of the heinous crimes. Yeah. But it made me really stop and think, because you can see in our precepts, favoring death, assisting death, all those kind of things for people who are fully ordained constitute a root transgression. So even you didn't do it yourself, assisting somebody or favoring somebody, is quite serious. So, in ancient times, I don't know about assisted suicide, but, how do we look at that nowadays? Especially if it's legal in the state.
For someone who was not fully like a bhikshu or bhikshuni, they also would lose their ordination.
You bet. Yeah. Okay, so it's something to think about, something to be careful about. Killing an arhat, we could see why that creates a big hindrance. You kill a liberated being. Yeah. You cause schism in the harmonious sangha. What that means is to have a sangha community, you have to, in general, you need at least 4 people. So it would be taking one sangha community and dividing it so that there were at least 2 groups, each of which had at least 4 people. Okay, and then maliciously causing the Buddha to shed blood. That was something we don't have the opportunity to do. Which we don't want to do, but it would be nice to be around Shakyamuni Buddha. Yeah.
Venerable, I haven't killed anybody, but how do you know that you've killed an arhat?
I guess there's, usually they say that when people have high realizations, there's something special about them. Yeah. Or maybe somebody has that reputation. At the time of the Buddha, it was very clear, and the Buddha himself acknowledged who the arhats were.
For the causing a schism in a sangha, it probably has to involve some kind of non-virtuous actions, because I'm thinking of a situation where you call attention to someone who's misbehaving or breaking precepts, and then factions form, and then people take sides, and then the group splits apart, and that could be considered
You
a
bet.
schism, and then you've created a faction, but you had a good motivation and you had good reason. Is that still?
What's your good reason and good motivation?
I mean, you call attention to something that you think is wrong, and let's say that yes, some misdeed is happening. So then, as a result, some people want to side with the person who's being accused. Some people want to go their own way.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, it has to be ordained people. It's not in the context of a Dharma center. Okay. If you do things very respectfully, and you just very, low key, you leave the monastery, you don't accuse anybody, you don't blame anybody, you don't create factions, you just leave, that's very different than being in the community and starting to call people names and defaming them, and then they call you names, you call them names back, and then you're arguing, and then absolutely no Dharma practice gets done because everybody's fighting. Okay, so it's something that's quite serious that develops over a period of time, where people are so in so much conflict that they can't even do the posada together. Yeah, it's like, I don't want to even be near you. So, yeah, that happened in Kosambi when the Buddha was alive, and he went and tried to talk to the monks there, to get them to be harmonious. They just kept fighting and fighting. So the Buddha went into the forest and he said, bye guys, I can't get through to you. And he just left. Yeah, you're in big trouble if the Buddha walks out on you because you're fighting. And after the Buddha's been trying to help you.
So the best thing is to just leave if you no longer agree with the leadership or how things are
Yeah,
being
you
run?
try and raise the issue in a polite way. You do what you can. You try and, bring it out in the open and get people to talk about it and, get some action on it to clear up what's going on. But if the institution just doesn't listen, yeah, and is saying, no, what we're doing is right, and we're not going to listen to anything that disagrees, then what can you do? You can stay there if you want to, that's fine. But if you just feel that it's so, that, it's so much against your own value system that you can't, then you just quietly leave. Yeah. My mother had a saying, don't knock your head against the wall. Yeah. In other words, you try and influence people in a way to help them, but if you try and you try and you try and you can't get through, don't knock your head against the wall, because the wall is going to win. Your head is not going to. Yeah? But what's also quite evident when you read the precepts is the Buddha really trusts the integrity of the Sangha. And by Sangha, I mean 4 or more fully ordained people. I don't mean people at a lay Dharma center. People often call that a Sangha. That's not the traditional usage of the word Sangha. Okay? But in the precepts, the Buddha really trusts the integrity of the community to make good decisions. And that's why there's several precepts that we have whereby if we accuse the Sangha of, I always forget everything's what I have to say. Say it again, what's the first one? Partiality, hatred, fear, and ignorance. Okay, partiality, hatred, fear, and ignorance. So if the Sangha is trying to talk to somebody because they're committing an offense, and that person goes, you don't know what you're talking about. The Sangha it plays favorites. The Sangha gives things that the person who's the storekeeper gives, extra robes to the people they like. They don't give them to me. And the Sangha is filled with partiality, hatred, fear, and ignorance. And they don't know how to make a wise decision. Yeah, it's just an in club. And they're, if you accuse the Sangha like that with a number of the precepts, it's a transgression. Not a root transgression. But, if you refuse to listen to the wisdom of the Sangha. Yeah? And so there's a number of the Bhikshu and Bhikshuni precepts whereby you are admonished, you are given advice 3 times to give you a chance to listen to what the Sangha is saying. And if you don't give up your own trip and whatever negative action you're doing and accept the Sangha's wisdom in saying that that is a negative action, and instead you accuse the Sangha of partiality, hatred, fear, and ignorance, then you commit a transgression. So the Buddha's really, trusting the wisdom of a community of people who are working together, who are learned in the precepts. So it's not just any, Tom, Dick, Harry, Susan, Louise, and Matilda, okay? It's people who have, been practicing for a long time and know the precepts well. Okay? Because, we all know in ourselves that when somebody calls us on something we're doing that isn't so good, we don't like it. Yeah. And, our first reaction is that person is partial. They're blaming me, but so-and-so does it too. How often do we hear that? Yeah. Why are you telling me not to do it? So-and-so does it, and so-and-so does it. But you're calling me on it? Why don't you talk about so-and-so and so-and-so? Yeah. And we get defensive. And then we justify, and we rationalize. Oh, but I didn't really do that. You misunderstood. It looked like yes, I took the car keys and I started the car, and I drove down country lane, but, I wasn't taking the car into town without asking permission. The car just kind of drove itself to the Newport McDonald's. Yeah. Whatever it is, isn't this the way we are? We always have a good reason for what we did. Yeah, this is, anybody, you're an only child, maybe you didn't have to do that. But the rest of us, isn't that? It's not my fault. It's my brother's fault. It's my sister's fault. They started it. Yeah. Why are you disciplining me just because I'm the oldest? Discipline them. They started it, right? Yeah. Isn't that what you did as a kid? Yeah. So we just grow up. We do that in the Sangha too. Yeah. It's not fair, you favor that child, not me. They're doing that. Yeah. Yeah. How often when somebody calls us on something that's very clear that we did and they saw, how many times do we put our hands together and say, thank you for pointing that out to me? Have you ever done that? No. We always have to explain that we actually had a good motivation for doing this. Yeah? We once had a situation where we didn't see the person take the money out of the Dana basket, but we knew that there was certain money in the Dana basket that morning. Nobody else was around, and that person was, and then they left right after lunch without telling anybody they were leaving, and the money wasn't there afterwards, so we didn't see them, but we suspect it, and I'm sure if we had said something to that person, they would have denied it. The cat ate it. Didn't the dog eat your homework? So I'm sure the cat ate the Dana. Yeah? We always have some reason why we aren't guilty. Yeah, that kind of behavior doesn't work well in the Sangha community where, because we're really, when you become a monastic, you're saying, I want to correct my faults. So when somebody points a fault out to you, since you've said, I want to correct my faults, Sangha community, please support me in doing that. Then the Sangha community supports you and points something out, and you go, who are you to talk to me like that? You know? I mean, that's how ego-sensitive we are. Yeah?
At the full ordination, they talked about this precept this causing a schism in a harmonious Sangha only being possible during the Buddha's time.
Right.
But during this discussion, it makes, like you said, in what position would you be to be a lay person to cause division in a Sangha? Right, so, and I was thinking, to their situations,
What about a layperson? What?
as in you have to be a lay person who causes the schism.
No.
No? Oh, as in you were formally ordained. You
No,
caused the
you're
schism.
ordained. At the time, the incident when the Buddha was alive was his cousin Devadatta was a monk.
Yes, I understand. But as in now you are a lay candidate being asked, have you caused a schism in the
Oh, I
Sangha?
see. Okay.
Right, so like you said just now, it's when
Yeah.
you were a lay person that you caused the
Uh-huh.
schism. So I was just thinking, so I guess there are cases where, say, you are a government official who institutes policies that
Mhm.
control the Sangha a certain way that causes it
Oh,
to
yeah.
split.
Oh, lay people can meddle in the Sangha's business really easily.
Yeah.
You know, you go and you whisper something in one person's ear, and then that person forms their faction, this person forms their faction. They do say that one and the one about shedding the Buddha, blood in the Buddha, can only be done at the time of the Buddha. Yeah. But you see that causing schism in the Sangha is one of the Sanghavasesa precepts. So it's quite serious. Yeah.
It made me think too, like cases I've seen in Singapore where a monastic is basically shamed publicly because of a scandal, but often it has to do with like politics within the lay board, and like why they didn't handle it internally with kindness versus it became this huge thing that affects everybody's faith, and now there's a monastic being publicly on trial, and
Yeah.
it's very ugly.
But part of that happens because it's a temple and you have lay people in the board of directors. And the lay people don't always know the monastic precepts. Yeah, so you have that kind of dynamic going on. But then sometimes, I think I know who you're thinking about. Yeah, that person did something that they said they had a good motivation, fine, but still it wasn't, they shouldn't have loaned the money that they did. Yeah? You don't loan the Sangha's money to lay people. The situation that happened. Yeah, but it's true, because then it creates a big hoopla. Okay, then, 11. Are you a non-human being? Okay, so that refers to gods or spirits that can change their form and come to receive ordination. So it seems like there are certain gods and spirits that can manifest as a human being, and they try and sneak into an ordination ceremony. So you're asked, are you a human being? Are you an animal? So that is referring to Nagas, who are this being who's kind of an animal. They're like a snake-like creature. They usually live in water or swamps or trees, and they can also change forms and look like a human being and try and take ordination. So these are things, there's things in the Vinaya stories when both these things kind of happened and people, spirits or Nagas tried to take ordination. Are you a person with both male and female organs? Again, which Sangha do you join? Yeah, the bhikshu or the bhikshuni. Yeah. What is your name and who is your upajjhaya? There were cases at the time of the Buddha where people didn't want to say their name. And they didn't want to even say the name of their upajjhaya. Yeah. So if you don't have an upajjhaya, you really can't. The upajjhaya is the person who is bringing you to the Sangha. That person is going to be like your teacher who's going to train you. And you don't want to say that person's name, or you don't have an upajjhaya, yeah, then it's difficult. So, somebody maybe is just recalcitrant, Don't ask me my name. Maybe your name is infamous. I don't know. How old are you? So you should say your age. In the case of full ordination, you have to be at least 20 years old. Yeah. Here for the Shramanera, it's usually to be old enough to scare a crow. So 7 or 8, they usually say. Okay, do you have robes and a bowl? So you have to come prepared, It can't be, well, I'm wearing my jeans and a t-shirt, and after I get through the ordination ceremony, I'm going to go find some robes. No, you have to be dressed properly and have your monastic robes and your bowl. Do you have permission from your parents? Okay. At the time of the Buddha, what happened is, there were all sorts of people who just left their family and got ordained without their parents' permission, and the parents were pretty upset. There was an incident in Taiwan a few years back where a lot of university students went to one temple, and the master there was very charismatic. They all wanted to ordain, and then after, they didn't talk to their parents about it first, and then when the parents found out, woo! The parents were really upset. This one, I think there's different situations, yeah? If you're old enough to be an adult and you have a steady mind and you want to ordain, even if your parents don't agree, I think it's okay for you to ordain. This was the situation with me anyway. So I was lucky they let me ordain. But it wasn't the thing. I mean, my parents were on the other side of the world. They weren't going to come and create interference or anything like that. But it's good to ask your parents, just so that they know and they're in the loop, and it's nice if they say yes. But I don't think it's essential nowadays. Yeah. If somebody's very young, they're still very attached to their parents, and the parents are vehemently against it, then I would say something, slow it down, and let's bring your parents to the monastery and help them kind of see what you want to do, and, help the parents out. But if somebody is an adult and, their parents may not be jumping for joy about it, but they're not making it, they're not causing interference, then I think it's okay. And that's how the Tibetans usually do it. And I think the Chinese too. So there are quite a number of people where that's the situation. Okay. Also, it doesn't ask here, but if you're married, you need to break up the relationship. Yeah? You can't be married and get ordained. Clearly that's going to create some problems. So it's very important you get divorced, the property is settled, the relationship is settled, and you're an independent person, Then you come for ordination, not while you're still in the process of getting divorced, and and especially if they're kids and you're fighting over custody. That's not the time to ordain. Okay. Are you in debt? Okay. So this is one. If you are currently in debt, you can't ordain. If you pay off your debt, you can. Okay. Now the reason for this is, there happened a situation at Nalanda many years ago where there was one monk who was ordained. He had debt, and the debt collector came to Nalanda Monastery. Okay. This created some problems. It was embarrassing for the monk, it was embarrassing for the Sangha, I don't know, then the debt collector has to go tell whoever, oh, there's the monk who doesn't want to pay his debts. So it doesn't look good for the Sangha, and there's problems that arise. So you have to pay your debts off, and that includes credit card debts. Because otherwise, you say, well, I don't have any debts, it's all on my credit card. But, you have $6,000 in credit card debt, and you're ordaining, and how are you ever going to pay that off? And if you have the mind that says, well, I just won't pay it off, isn't that stealing? Okay, are you a servant? So this question is asked because if you're a servant, you need to get the master's permission. So what this usually boils down to is if you have a job, you have to quit your job. Okay? As it happens in the Tibetan tradition, they will let people get ordained and then continue with their job. And I've heard at some Dharma centers, the Geshis tell people that they need to keep working because they need to earn money. Even they're living in the Dharma center, they have to pay rent to the Dharma center, even they're working in the Dharma center. So the Geshe says you have to keep working at your job. Yeah, I really disagree with that. Because how is that person going to learn how to become a monastic? If every morning you get up and your hair is grown out and you put on lay clothes and you go to your job and you work 8 hours a day and you come home with a paycheck and you wear your robes a couple of nights a week when there's something at the Dharma center, yeah, how are you living a monastic life? Who's training you as a monastic? Yeah. I know people who have done that for many years. They haven't disrobed. I think that's quite miraculous. Most of the people I know who do that, they disrobe after a short while. Because it's just too difficult. You don't have the joy of lay life, and you don't have the joy of the monastic life. But you get to do what you want when you want to do it. And there's, so that is very attractive to some people who don't want to really join a community where they have to, live according to the guidelines in the community. Okay? So I really don't encourage that. I personally will not participate in an ordination when somebody is doing that because I don't think they're going to get the full value of being a monastic because they're kind of on the fence. Yeah, and I think that's quite sad and yeah. Okay, are you a high official of the country? So again, if you're a high official, you have a job, you have some responsibilities, you have to get permission to do that. So again, in modern context, what it's saying is if you have worldly responsibilities, you have to make sure that it's very clear that you're giving up those responsibilities and that somebody else will take over so that other people are not left high and dry. Okay? And it's just much clearer. I mean, if you still have a job and you get ordained and you're going to work 1 or 2 more months to get enough money and then you're going to quit your job, but you've already ordained and wait until you've settled everything, then ordain. Then your mind is clear. You're not sitting on the fence. It's just much easier for everybody. Are you a woman or a man? So, if you're joining the Bhikshuni Sangha, or you have to say woman. For the Bhikshu Sangha, you say man. Okay? And then a woman or a man could have such illnesses as leprosy, carbuncles, dry gangrene, or insanity. So instead of seizures, if your book says seizures, it should be insanity. Okay? Do you have any of these illnesses? So here, the reason for all this is that there's some diseases in which if you are perpetually ill with some chronic illness, it's going to be very hard for you to really participate in the Sangha life. Yeah. If you have some kind of disgusting thing where other people find it disgusting, you have carbuncles or you have sores and they're oozing and things like that. You have some very contagious disease like tuberculosis, and you have active TB, not dormant TB. Then you're putting the whole Sangha at risk. And here especially insanity. Yeah, if people have, quite, I don't want to say severe, because that we don't know what the line for severe is, but they have quite pronounced mental imbalance, then it's better they don't ordain. Yeah, because if you're going to live with the Sangha, if you're going to keep the precepts, you have to have some ability to get along with other people. You have to have some ability to follow guidelines, to receive advice. If somebody is psychotic and they're hallucinating, that it's going to be very difficult for them. Yeah, if they are clinically depressed, and this is before they've ordained, such that, really clinically depressed, they can't get out of bed in the morning, and I've met people that depressed, then it's not going to help them to ordain, because they can't really function within the Sangha. So it's not discrimination. It's really seeing, what is best for somebody at a certain time. Like all these young people who come, who are really lost and say, I want to ordain. We could say, well, you see what the Tibetans say, is it is more meritorious to keep the precepts for one day in this degenerate age than to keep them your whole life at the time of the Buddha. So they are very open. They will ordain almost anybody. And like I said, they don't know the language, and so the people aren't really screened at all. What has happened is that then people who shouldn't be ordained, ordain. They misbehave, and the whole Sangha then people lose faith in the Sangha. Yeah. So it's very difficult for the Western Sangha sometimes, because this situation has happened, and then people look at the Sangha and say, some of these people are real, they're dingbats, and or whatever. And so then the whole Sangha gets a bad name. So it's not just to protect the reputation of the Sangha, but it's also for the benefit of that person. Because we've had situations with people coming who aren't, so balanced, and it's clear if they took the ordination, that's not going to solve their problem. In some cases, it intensifies the problem, and it would be much better if they had therapy or whatever they need to have to heal the psychological difficulty they had, and then ordain. Then it'll be much easier for them. I remember when I lived in France, this was people who would come to stay at the center. They weren't ordained, but there was one woman who came at the center, and everybody is like, oh, you're on meds, but the Dharma will cure everything. So one guy said, just go off your meds. it's fine, the Dharma will help you heal. And she stripped her clothes off and was running up and down the corridors of the Dharma Center naked. You know? So she wasn't ordained, but you know, this kind of situation, clearly it doesn't benefit that person themselves to ordain somebody if they have quite severe mental problems. And then it really creates so much turbulence in the community. You know, all you need is one person who's, you know, a bit off, and it ripples through an entire community.
About the non-human being and animal thing, I can imagine that we wouldn't want to have a Naga in here, but wouldn't it be possible to have a Naga monastery or something like that, or a God's monastery?
Talk to the Buddha about that, okay? I'm not very informed about that. Yeah, the Buddha's the one who set up the Sangha, so you can check with him. Okay, so the Buddhist monastic code, you know, talked a little bit about these illnesses, and it said includes those with serious, disfiguring, or communicable diseases such as leprosy, boils, eczema, tuberculosis, or epilepsy, as well as goiter, hemorrhoids, fistulas, upsets of bile or phlegm, cough, asthma, or any disease that is chronically afflicting, very painful, and disagreeable. Hemorrhoids, unless you have a really severe case of bleeding hemorrhoids, I think you're okay, you can ordain. Fistulas, it's much better to have that repaired. Yeah. Cough, unless you're like coughing all the time and really disturbing people's meditation, I don't think that's so bad. Asthma, we have things nowadays to treat asthma, coughs, stuff like that. Okay? But diseases that are painful and disagreeable, yeah. So that it doesn't help the person to ordain. Yeah, if you're very, very sick, yeah, it may be meritorious to ordain, but how are you going to train as a monastic? How are you going to do the Sangha activities? Yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult. Okay, so I think in those cases it's better somebody takes the 5 or 8 precepts and they remain as a really good monastic, a really good lay practitioner. Now the question comes up, what about somebody ordains and then they get one of these things? Then you still have your ordination and the Sangha helps you. Yeah. So you don't get kicked out if you develop a disease afterwards, because we all have bodies that are going to fall apart. So. Mm-hmm.
What's the current status on HIV for people who want to ordain?
Yeah. I haven't heard any broad consensus, yeah, but my feeling is if somebody is taking a cocktail whereby their HIV is under control, and they have some cocktails now, I've talked to somebody where the virus doesn't even show in his blood now. Yeah, so somebody like that, then I think that's okay. Yeah. Okay, so we've gone over time. What was 43? Okay, so we'll stop here.